In this video, we'll be looking at the last part of hominid studies, the movement and the origin of modern man all over the planet. The San people of southern Africa, which we also have learnt about in previous grades, commonly known as the Bushmen, have lived as hunter-gatherers for thousands of years, and they are believed, or actually have been found because of DNA analysis, to have the most diverse genetic variation than any other population on the planet. And since we know that the longer a population is around, the more time they've had for mutations in their DNA. Hence, these guys, because they have the greatest variety of genes within their DNA, they have been in existence for the longest time. Their DNA shows that they must be direct descendants of the first and earliest humans ever on the planet. And from them, you have common Africans and people all over the world in every other continent. Some modern Africans have the most diverse DNA than all the other racial groups on the earth. Let's look at 3 examples of where they found the oldest human artifacts. These will be at the Border Cave in KZN, Classes River Cave, and then Pinnacle Point and Blombos down in the Cape as well. The Border Cave in KZN is actually on the border overlooking Swaziland, and this site produced a complete skeleton of an infant and the remains of at least 5 adults with more than 69,000 artifacts. This infant, this little baby, was tested and believed to be about 100,000 years old. Now, it was found with shell ornaments and red staining, indicating a possible burial practice, and that would suggest that early hominid species was actually capable of abstract and symbolic thought. This is an actual photo of the remains that was found, and you can see that the baby was ceremoniously buried with the seashell beads around it. It suggests that this baby was deeply cared for, and the beads also prove that these people valued beauty and art. The second site is at Classes River, which is down in the Cape. The bones that was found here was also dated back to 100,000 to 60,000 years ago, and you can see from the skull it is indeed distinctly human. There's also various other bone fragments, and then cave drawings that was found, and on the cave drawings you can actually see the guy holding a bow and an arrow, and then a thingy at the back with spare arrows, walking upright completely. So it's human. It was a human with all sorts of hunting skills and practices that most modern humans would have. Here you can see the chiseled and shaped stones sharpened to be used as tools. In the Blombos cave, which is adjacent to the Classes River cave, they found engraved ochre dating back 75,000 years. Now, sophisticated tools and shell beads with this ochre art was found, and it showed again Homo sapiens were capable of symbolic thought. All of these artifacts were obviously possible because of the benefits that came along with bipedalism. The fact that you now have an upright body will obviously expose a smaller surface area to the sun, so it reduces the risk of overheating. It will expose the body larger surface area to air currents, so it reduces the dependency on water. But then, very important at number 3 here, it frees the hands so that you can make tools and you can do art and you can explore. The freeing of the hands also allow preparation of food, better hunting, fighting, carrying young, caring for the young better. Your vision also extends further over tall grass so that you can find food and avoid predators. And then also obviously will lead to the adaptability to occupy a wider range of habitats. Bipedalism itself obviously then encourages the free hands to develop more complex tools. And with these complex tools, you have hunting of larger prey, which leads to an increase in protein and fat intake in the diet, which would result in improved brain development. Now, in reverse again, the improved brain development would improve hunting techniques. Now, as soon as you have a group that hunts cooperatively and gathers around fires, that would encourage communication and obviously language development. And with the language, you would have social interaction, and that will then encourage culture, and hence we see the artwork after that as well. Now, as I said before, bipedalism would actually encourage the movement to various areas. Now, Homo sapiens and Homo erectus is believed to have migrated, to have moved all over the place. And these are the possible reasons why this might have happened. The first is obviously climate change. If there's a drying in Africa, you'd have less water, you'd have less food, which means they would move. And since they're omnivores, they would probably move and follow herds of animals, or they would follow large predators that moves northward after their food. They were also able to make and control fire, giving them the freedom to move to colder climates. Now, both Homo erectus and Homo sapiens were vulnerable to predators, but if there's no caves, it means that they can't stay in an area very long, which means they would move. But then again, you'd also have some competition for food. So Homo erectus and Homo sapiens might have migrated away from one another to different areas to lessen the competition. There are two main models that are used to describe or theorize how migration happened. The first is called the out of Africa model, and the next is the multi-regional model. The multi-regional model says that Homo erectus migrated from Africa and arrived at various destinations as Homo erectus. And here in these various places, various populations of Homo erectus then evolved into Homo sapiens. So basically Homo sapiens evolved in multiple regions. So in this diagram you can see Homo erectus is actually originally in Africa. Then some of them stay in Africa while 3 other groups migrate. So that gives us Asian Homo erectus, European Homo erectus, and Australian Homo erectus. Then in these 3, plus Africa, 4 different regions, these Homo erectus species evolved into archaic humans. And then in each of these regions, the Homo erectus evolved, giving us modern Africans, modern Europeans, modern Asians, and modern Australians. The out of Africa model, however, says that Homo erectus also migrated out of Africa and arrived at various destinations, but here they went extinct. Only the Homo erectus population in Africa survived, and they evolved into Homo sapiens. And then the Homo sapiens from Africa migrated and arrived everywhere else in the world as Homo sapiens already. Now, this theory is substantiated with genetic evidence, as we discussed before. Because mitochondrial DNA testing has shown that there's greater genetic diversity amongst Africans than between any other populations, it means that their genes are the oldest. And then obviously the archaeological evidence confirms that modern humans evolved in Africa and then spread everywhere else. Now, one very big question that people always ask is, can you prove evolution? Can you see evolution happening? And there are examples of evolution in progress, but really just in unicellular and very basic organisms. This example is of resistance in bacteria to antibiotics. We also see the same thing happening when HIV virus builds up a resistance to antiretroviral drugs. If a person gets infected with some bacteria, the original strain of bacteria shown here in yellow little dots, amongst those there's 2 little red dots that's actually the resistant bacteria. Now what happens if you get treated with antibiotics and you don't complete the course or you don't use it correctly? What could happen is that those 2 little red dots, those 2 resistant bacterial cells, will actually survive. They will multiply and give rise to a whole new generation, a whole new population of bacteria that is resistant or a bit more resistant to the antibiotic. Now, if this process continues to happen and there's random mutations in this bacterial population, then actually the bacteria can change into a completely different strain. Now, it's not necessarily a new species because bacteria aren't speciated like complex organisms, but it is really evolution in progress. We find something similar happening to insects when they become resistant to insecticides. Now, on the left, you can see a leaf, and in the first generation, before pesticides are given, most of the insects are the same color, they're green in color, but there's one little red dude, and this guy is resistant to the pesticides. Because we know that because on the right-hand side, after the pesticides being given, that's the guy that survives. This red one is obviously the survivor, which means he's got time to reproduce. So in the second generation or the consecutive generations, the red ones are more predominant. You can see more of them. And when they get sprayed the second time, again the red ones will survive. Eventually, after random mutations, also giving rise to a whole new pesticide-resistant population. Although these examples are often used to show evolution in progress, you still need to remember this is actually natural selection, because the red bugs on here and the green ones are still able to interbreed with one another, so they're not really new species. But evolutionists love to say, well, if we leave it long enough, evolution will happen, speciation will happen. But we need to remember that humans are way more complicated. Our genes are more complicated. So we can't prove that that's happening in the human body.